On July 28, 2026, 80-year-old Dominick Anthony Occhicone was executed by lethal injection in Florida. Dominick was convicted of the 1986 murders of his girlfriend's father and mother, Raymond Artzner and Martha Artzner in Holiday, Florida, Pasco County. He received a death sentence for Martha's murder and a life sentence for Raymond's murder. At 80 years old, he became the oldest inmate executed in the state of Florida. Before we explore this case, I invite you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below letting us know where you are watching from. Your support allows us to continue producing in-depth, respectful documentaries that honor victims and highlight the pursuit of justice. What happens when someone refuses to accept that a relationship is over? For most people, heartbreak eventually fades, anger turns into acceptance, life moves forward. But for Dominick Anthony Occhicone, rejection became an obsession, and that obsession turned into a nightmare for an entire family. He was not a stranger who attacked random victims. He knew exactly who he wanted to confront. But when he could not get to the woman who had left him, he turned his rage toward the two people who had tried to protect her. Dominick Anthony Occhicone was born on August 29, 1945, the same year World War II ended. By all accounts, he lived a relatively quiet life, but those who knew him described him as possessive, emotionally unstable, and unable to handle rejection. Psychological evaluations conducted years later painted a picture of a man with deep emotional problems whose anger intensified whenever he lost control over a relationship. In 1982, Dominick Occhicone began dating Anita Garrity, a woman approximately 7 years younger than him. Their relationship eventually became serious, and by 1985 they were engaged to be married. During part of their relationship, they lived together with Anita's 2 daughters and Dominick's young son. But the relationship steadily deteriorated. According to Anita, Dominick had a violent temper and became increasingly controlling. Arguments became more frequent, and she eventually realized she no longer wanted to marry him. In September 1985, Anita ended the engagement. Fearing for her safety, she moved out and returned to her parents' home in Holiday, Florida, a quiet community in Pasco County about 30 miles northwest of Tampa. Her parents, Raymond and Martha Artzner, welcomed her and their grandchildren into their home. They had never approved of Dominick and were relieved their daughter had finally ended the relationship. Unfortunately, Dominick refused to let go. Instead of accepting the breakup, he began stalking Anita. He repeatedly appeared at the Artzner home without warning, often arriving late at night or in the early hours of the morning. He pounded on windows, knocked on the sliding glass doors leading into Anita's bedroom, and begged to speak with her. Sometimes he remained outside for long periods, refusing to leave even after repeated demands. He also sent flowers to Anita's workplace in an attempt to win her back. None of it worked. The more Anita rejected him, the more obsessed he became. By the summer of 1986, his behavior had grown increasingly unpredictable. During the early morning hours of June 10, 1986, Dominick once again arrived outside the Artzner residence. It was shortly after midnight when Anita awoke to the familiar sound of someone pounding on the sliding glass door outside her bedroom. She immediately recognized Dominick's voice. From inside the locked house, she refused to open the door. Instead, she warned him that if he did not leave, she would call the police. After several minutes of yelling, Dominick finally walked away. The family believed the confrontation was over. Roughly an hour later, Dominick returned. This time he was armed with a handgun. Unlike his earlier visit, he had come prepared. Before approaching the house, investigators later determined that he deliberately cut the home's telephone lines. By disabling the family's only means of communication, he ensured they would be unable to call for help once the attack began. Inside the house were Raymond Artzner, 66, his wife Martha, 62, their daughter Anita, and one of Anita's young daughters. Again, Dominick began shouting outside the home, demanding to see Anita. No one answered. Hearing the commotion, Raymond Artzner decided to confront him. Grabbing a broomstick, Raymond stepped outside and ordered Dominick to leave the property. He never had the chance. As soon as Raymond approached, Dominick raised the handgun and fired. The bullet struck Raymond in the chest, causing him to collapse outside the house. The gunshot shattered the quiet neighborhood. Inside, Anita immediately realized the situation had escalated beyond anything she had feared. She grabbed her young daughter and fled through another exit at the rear of the house, running through the darkness toward a nearby neighbor's home. That decision saved both of their lives. While Anita escaped, Dominick forced his way inside the residence. He smashed his way into the home, searching for the woman who had rejected him. Instead, he encountered Martha Artzner. Martha had remained inside after hearing her husband confront Dominick outside. Dominick opened fire. He shot Martha 4 times. She died inside her own home. By the time Dominick realized Anita was no longer there, his intended target had already escaped. Rather than continue searching the neighborhood, he fled the scene on foot, leaving Raymond critically wounded outside and Martha dead inside the house. Moments later, Anita reached a neighbor's residence and called the police. Deputies from the Pasco County Sheriff's Office rushed to the scene. When they arrived, they found Raymond Artzner lying outside, still barely alive despite the gunshot wound to his chest. Knowing he had only moments left, deputies asked who had shot him. Raymond identified Dominick Anthony Occhicone as the gunman before succumbing to his injuries. Inside the home, investigators found Martha Artzner dead from multiple gunshot wounds. Crime scene investigators documented the broken entryway, the severed telephone lines, and shell casings scattered around the property. It quickly became clear this had not been a spontaneous argument, but a carefully planned attack. Because Anita personally knew the shooter, detectives immediately identified Dominick as their prime suspect. Within hours, law enforcement issued a statewide alert describing both the suspect and his vehicle. The search would not last long. A sheriff's bloodhound tracked Dominick sent away from the Artzner home and toward nearby railroad tracks. There, deputies found him hiding. He was arrested without incident. During the arrest, investigators recovered the handgun believed to have been used in the murders. Ballistics testing later confirmed it matched the shell casings recovered from the crime scene, providing powerful forensic evidence linking Dominick directly to the killings. With the murder weapon recovered, eyewitness testimony from Anita, Raymond's dying identification, and overwhelming physical evidence, prosecutors believed they had assembled a case that would leave little room for doubt. The criminal investigation was over. The courtroom battle was about to begin. In 1987, Dominick Occhicone Jr. went on trial for the murders of Raymond and Martha Artzner. At trial, prosecutors argued the murders were planned, pointing to his repeated threats, the gun he carried, and his decision to cut the phone line before attacking. The defense argued he was suffering from severe mental disturbance and that the killings were the result of an emotional breakdown. The jury rejected that argument and convicted him of 2 counts of first-degree murder. During sentencing, the jury recommended the death penalty by a vote of 7-5 for the murder of Martha Artzner. For Raymond Artzner's death, he received a life sentence. However, in November 1987, the judge formally sentenced Dominick Occhicone to death. For nearly 40 years, Dominick remained on death row through decades of appeals. His final legal arguments focused on his age and whether executing an 80-year-old man was constitutional, but the courts rejected those challenges. On his final day, Dominick Occhicone ate eggplant parmesan, salad, cornbread, and a soda before facing lethal injection. In his final statement, he apologized, saying, "I know it don't mean much, but I'm sorry. I never meant to do what I did." He was pronounced dead at 6:13 p.m. After 4 decades of waiting, the state of Florida delivered the final chapter in the case of Dominick Occhicone. For more true crime cases, death row stories, and execution reports, subscribe and turn on notifications.